Use your brains. Play with friends.
Galaxy Conquest.
Do whatever it takes.
Skills Lounge.
You big nerd. Download now.
Gliese Prime glittered beneath twin suns. Golden towers pierced the clouds. Transit lanes crossed the sky like rivers of light. Cargo elevators connected the surface to orbit, while thousands of vessels moved through carefully coordinated traffic streams. Most visitors saw beauty. Its citizens saw something else. Proof. Proof that sacrifice worked. Proof that hardship created strength. Proof that the Firstborn Law was worth its cost. At least, that's what adults like to tell themselves. Children were rarely asked their opinion. Cassian sat cross-legged on the floor of the family apartment. A dismantled kitchen appliance surrounded him. Springs, panels, wiring. Half the machine sat on one side of the room. The other half sat on the other side. His mother entered carrying groceries. She stopped immediately. "Tell me that's not the food recycler." Cassian didn't look up. It was already broken. It was working this morning. It was working badly. His mother sighed. "You've reduced it to 47 separate pieces." 46. His father laughed from the kitchen. "He's counting." Cassian held up a small gear. "This is the problem." His mother stared. "You know what normal children do?" "What?" "They play games." Cassian examined the gear. "This is a game." His father laughed harder. His mother shook her head. "One day, you're going to take apart something important." Cassian smiled. "Then I'll put it back together." The transit yard was Cassian's favorite place in the city. Hundreds of maintenance vehicles moved through the facility every day. Repair crews worked around the clock. Cargo transports arrived and departed constantly. Most people saw noise and confusion. Cassian saw patterns. "Why are those trucks waiting?" he asked. His father looked up. "Which ones?" "The 3 near Base 7. His father squinted. "They're waiting for replacement parts." Cassian frowned. "Why don't the parts arrive first?" His father laughed. "Because nobody asked you to run the transit authority." Cassian looked back toward the vehicles. "It would be faster." "Probably. So why don't they do it?" His father tightened a bolt. "Because people are complicated." Cassian thought about that. A few minutes later, he said, "Machines seem easier." His father smiled. "Give it time." That evening, Cassian and Rowan sat on the apartment rooftop. The city stretched endlessly around them. Traffic streams crossed the sky overhead. Ships descended toward orbital elevators. Lights shimmered beneath the stars. Rowan pointed upward. "Where do you think that one is going?" Cassian followed his finger. "Cargo lane 17. Rowan groaned. "That's not what I meant." "Then ask a better question." Rowan laughed. "Fine." He pointed again. "If you could leave Gliese tomorrow, where would you go?" Cassian thought for a moment. "Somewhere nobody's heard of." "Why?" "Because if everyone already knows about it, somebody already figured it out." Rowan stared. "That doesn't make any sense." "It does to me." Rowan shook his head. "You're weird. You're boring. At least I'm staying." The words hung in the air. Neither spoke for several seconds. Eventually, Rowan looked away. Neither brother wanted to discuss Exile, because once they started talking about it, it would become real. The following week, Cassian attended his final school assembly. A government representative stood before the students. Behind him glowed the symbol of the Golden Imperium. "Every generation strengthens the next," the official announced. The room repeated the familiar response. Through sacrifice. Cassian repeated the words with everyone else. The official continued. The Firstborn Law ensures that every citizen learns self-reliance. A student raised her hand. Did you go through exile? The official smiled. Of course. Was it difficult? The room became quiet. For a moment, the man seemed unsure. Then he answered. Yes. The honesty surprised everyone, including Cassian. Then why continue doing it? The student asked. The official stared at the class. Because difficult things can still be necessary. Cassian wasn't sure he agreed, but he remembered the answer. 3 weeks before departure, Rowan burst into Cassian's room. I found something. Cassian didn't look up from his workbench. You say that every day. No, seriously. Rowan shut the door, lowered his voice, and produced a tiny capsule. Cassian stared. What is that? A communicator. Cassian immediately sat upright. That's illegal. I know. Very illegal. I know. Cassian picked it up carefully. The device was barely larger than a vitamin. Where did you get this? Rowan grinned. I'm not answering that. Cassian laughed despite himself. You're going to get arrested. Not if it works. The laughter faded. Neither spoke. Both understood exactly what the device represented. Hope. The night before departure, the family shared dinner together. Nobody mentioned Exile, not once. Instead, they discussed ordinary things. Work, neighbors, transit delays, weather forecasts, anything except the obvious. Eventually, Cassian's father set down his fork. The room became quiet. I don't have any great advice. Cassian looked up. His father smiled weakly. I've been trying to think of something wise to say for 3 months. Rowan laughed. Their father continued. I still haven't found it? The family smiled. Then he looked directly at Cassian. So I'll just say this. The room became silent. Don't spend your life waiting to come back. Cassian frowned. What do you mean? His father thought for a moment. Live where you are. Nobody said anything after that. Years later, Cassian would remember those 4 words. Live where you are. The terminal contained thousands of children. Some cried openly, others looked terrified. A few pretended to be excited. Security officers moved through the crowd efficiently. Families remained behind designated barriers. The process felt strangely industrial, as if exile had become routine. Because it had. Cassian hugged his mother, then his father, then Rowan. The hug lasted longer than either intended. Finally, Rowan whispered, You swallowed it, right? Cassian nodded. Rowan laughed nervously. Good. A security officer approached. It is time. The moment had arrived. Neither brother was ready. The transport rose into orbit. Below, Gliese slowly disappeared. Cassian remained pressed against the window, watching, memorizing, trying to hold on to every detail. A girl sitting nearby wiped away tears. A boy across the aisle stared at the floor. Nobody knew what to say. Eventually, the planet became a distant sphere, then a bright dot, then nothing. For the first time in 13 years, Cassian existed somewhere beyond the reach of everyone he loved. The realization hurt more than he expected. 3 days later, Cassian sat alone in his tiny apartment on Vesper's reach. Rain hammered the window. Factory sirens echoed through the city. The room felt impossibly empty. Slowly, he activated the communicator. Nothing happened. Then the screen flickered. Rowan appeared instantly. Both brothers started laughing. The relief was overwhelming. "You look terrible," Rowan said. Cassian laughed. "I've been living in a shipping crate." "Mom said you were exaggerating." Cassian turned the camera. Rowan stared. "Oh." A pause. "Never mind." They laughed again. Then Rowan looked around his own room. "It feels weird." "What does?" "The apartment." Cassian frowned. "Why?" Rowan looked away, then shrugged. "Everything feels smaller without you." For a moment, neither brother spoke. Outside, rain continued falling across Vesper's reach. Inside, two brothers sat separated by light years. Trying desperately to pretend 17 years wasn't a very long time. The rain began before the transport doors opened. By the time Cassian stepped onto the platform, he was already soaked. Cold water ran down his face. Gray clouds filled the sky. Everything seemed darker than Gliese, older, rougher. The city of Drem Vale stretched toward the horizon. Factories, warehouses, cargo cranes, smoke, noise, movement, everywhere movement. Cassian stopped to stare. A worker nearly collided with him. "Keep moving, kid." The man never slowed down, never apologized, never looked back. Cassian adjusted the strap on his bag. The worker had already disappeared into the crowd. Nobody cared who he was. Nobody cared where he came from. For the first time in his life, he was completely anonymous. The realization frightened him. The apartment map turned out to be wrong. Twice. After 2 hours of walking through rain, Cassian was completely lost. He stood beneath a transit bridge, staring at the damaged map. "This can't be right," a nearby food vendor laughed. "First day?" Cassian looked up. "Is it obvious?" The woman smiled. "You've checked that map 6 times." Cassian folded it. "Maybe the map is wrong." "It is." The woman pointed down the street. "Construction changed the district 3 years ago." Cassian blinked. "Then why are they still using it?" The woman laughed again. "Welcome to Vesper's reach." 3 hours later, he finally found the apartment. Nobody rescued him. Nobody guided him. He solved the problem himself. The lesson stayed with him. Work came quickly. Good work did not. Cassian spent his first months cleaning loading docks. The shifts started before sunrise. The pay barely covered expenses. Most workers ignored him. One supervisor constantly criticized him. Yet Cassian kept showing up. One morning he arrived early and noticed containers stacked incorrectly. He stared for several seconds. Something seemed off. The supervisor walked by. "Problem?" Cassian pointed. "Those containers should be reversed." The supervisor sighed. "Just clean the dock." Cassian returned to work. 2 days later, the shipment was delayed, exactly where Cassian predicted. The supervisor found him afterward. "You noticed that?" Cassian nodded. The supervisor stared, then shrugged. "That's annoying," and walked away. Over time, Drem Vale stopped feeling random. Patterns emerged. Every district had a rhythm. Every neighborhood had rules. Certain streets became dangerous after dark. Others remained safe. Some businesses survived for decades. Others failed within months. Cassian paid attention, always. While walking to work, he studied traffic flow, delivery schedules, crowd behavior. Most people simply moved through the city. Cassian observed it, and slowly the city revealed itself. One storm flooded a major transit route. Hundreds of workers were stranded. Traffic stretched for blocks. Everyone complained. Nobody acted. Cassian noticed a damaged maintenance entrance nearby. Curiosity won. He climbed through. The tunnel ran beneath the flooded district. Dry, clear, usable. An hour later, he emerged on the opposite side. The next day, he showed several dock workers. Within a week, dozens of people used the shortcut. One worker slapped him on the shoulder. "Kid, you just saved me 40 minutes." Cassian smiled. The compliment meant more than he expected.
Zentara 1. Ivy League-educated engineers with real Fortune 500 experience. We architect real-time systems that are reliable, scalable, and production-ready. We optimize mobile and web performance for real devices, not just demos. From customer products to admin tooling, we deliver complete platforms. Need senior engineering execution from prototype to launch? Book a call at Zentara1.com or email hello@Zentara1.com.
An elderly market vendor named Mara occasionally hired him. The pay was terrible. The conversations were valuable. One afternoon, she watched him reorganize inventory. "You've done that 3 times." Cassian looked up. "It's inefficient." She laughed. "You're 13." "It's still inefficient." Mara shook her head. "Normal people don't stare at delivery schedules for fun." Cassian pointed toward several crates. "Those should have arrived yesterday." Mara blinked. "How do you know that?" "The labels." She stared at him for a moment, then smiled. "You're a strange kid." It wasn't the first time someone had said that. Every 7th night, Rowan called. Those conversations became sacred. Sometimes they discussed important things. Most of the time, they didn't. "Remember when you got stuck in the transit elevator?" Rowan asked. Cassian groaned. "I was 7. You cried." "I did not." "You absolutely did." "You're lying." Rowan laughed. The sound filled the apartment. For a few moments, Exile disappeared. For a few moments, they were simply brothers again, 2 kids arguing about old stories, pretending nothing had changed. Their grandfather often appeared during the calls. Gliese Vale had completed Exile decades earlier. Nobody understood Cassian better. One evening, the old man leaned toward the communicator. "You look too comfortable." Cassian laughed. "I live in a leaking apartment." "Exactly." "What does that mean?" Gliese pointed at the screen. "Comfort isn't furniture." Cassian rolled his eyes. "There it is." "What?" "The mysterious old man advice." Rowan laughed. Gliese grinned. "You'll miss it when I'm gone." The brothers immediately protested. The old man only smiled. At the time, nobody thought much about the comment. The message arrived shortly after Cassian turned 16. Rowan appeared on screen, silent. His eyes were red. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Cassian understood. "No." Rowan lowered his head. "No." The word escaped before Cassian could stop it. Their grandfather was gone. The apartment suddenly felt colder, smaller, empty. Rowan wiped his eyes. "He kept talking about you." Cassian stared at the floor. "He said you were doing well." Neither brother spoke again for several moments. Sometimes grief arrives quietly, like rain, like darkness, like silence. The call ended differently than usual. Neither laughed. Neither told stories. Neither argued. Near the end, Rowan glanced away from the screen, as though someone had entered the room. The movement lasted only a second, but Cassian noticed. "You okay?" Rowan hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah." The answer sounded wrong. Cassian studied him. Something felt off, something unspoken. Eventually, Rowan stood. "I'll call next week." Cassian nodded. "Same time?" "Same time." The screen went dark. Neither brother knew it then, but that would be their final conversation. The following week, no call arrived. Then another week passed, then another. and somewhere inside the rain-soaked city of Drem Vale, Cassian began learning what true loneliness felt like. The following week, Cassian waited. The communicator sat on the table. The apartment was clean. Dinner remained untouched. The rain tapped softly against the window. Every few minutes he glanced toward the device. Nothing. Hours passed. Still nothing. Eventually, he went to sleep. The next week, he waited again. Then again. Then again. At first, he worried something had happened. Then he became angry. Then confused. Then tired. Months passed. The communicator remained silent. One evening, he stared at the dark screen and whispered, "Where are you?" The room offered no answer. Life refused to stop. Work continued, bills continued, rent continued. The city kept moving, and eventually Cassian moved with it. One morning, Mara watched him organize inventory. "You look older," Cassian laughed. "That's how time works." "Not what I meant." She handed him a crate. "You stopped looking over your shoulder." Cassian paused. She was right. For years, he had lived half his life on Gliese and half on Vesper's reach. Now, something had changed. The memories remained. But the waiting was disappearing. Slowly. Painfully. The city was becoming home. The loneliness didn't vanish. It changed. Some nights, Cassian still sat by the window, watching rain slide down the glass, listening to distant factory sirens, thinking about Rowan, thinking about his parents, thinking about the grandfather who would never call again. But those thoughts arrived less often now. And when they did, they hurt less. That realization frightened him. One evening, he picked up the communicator, turned it over in his hands, then placed it in a drawer. For the first time in years, he went an entire week without checking it. Cassian first noticed Rixa because everyone else noticed Rixa. She seemed to know everyone: dock workers, market vendors, drivers, mechanics, security guards. People waved when she passed. People smiled. People trusted her. That was unusual in Drem Vale. One afternoon, she stopped beside Mara's stall. "You the kid who reorganized her inventory?" Cassian looked up. "Depends." Rixa laughed. "Good answer." She pointed toward the shelves. "Mara says profits went up 12%. Mara nodded proudly. Cassian shrugged. The deliveries were arriving in the wrong order. Rixa stared, then smiled. Interesting? At the time, he didn't realize she was evaluating him. Over the following months, Rixa appeared frequently. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. One evening, she found him studying a busy market intersection. "What are you looking at?" "The deliveries." She followed his gaze. "What about them?" 3 suppliers are using the same route." "So?" "They're slowing each other down." Rixa blinked. "Most people don't notice that." Cassian shrugged. "Most people aren't watching." For several seconds, she studied him, then laughed. "You're going to either become very successful or get yourself into serious trouble." A few weeks later, Rixa invited him for coffee. The cafe overlooked a cargo district. Ships descended through the clouds outside. Workers moved between warehouses. Rixa waited until they were seated. "Can I ask you something?" Cassian nodded. "Why are you still working loading docks?" The question surprised him. "Because it pays." "Barely." "It pays." Rixa stirred her drink. "You're smarter than that." Cassian laughed. "You don't know me." "I know enough." She leaned forward. "You understand systems?" Cassian said nothing. "Most people see transactions," she pointed outside. "You see networks." For a moment, he thought she might offer him a legitimate job. She did not. Rixa eventually showed him the business, not immediately, gradually, carefully. The first time he saw a sensory impact demonstration, he hated it. The user connected a neural cartridge. Seconds later, they smiled, then laughed, then cried. Artificial emotions, artificial experiences, artificial memories. When it ended, the user looked devastated, as though reality itself had become disappointing. Afterward, Cassian frowned. People pay for that? Millions do. Why? Rixa looked surprised. You really don't know? Cassian shook his head. She looked around the city. The same reason people do anything, which is for a chance to feel better. By 17, life had become harder. Rent increased. Work hours decreased. Several employers cut staff. The colony economy slowed. Opportunities disappeared. One evening, Cassian sat reviewing expenses. The numbers didn't work. No matter how many times he recalculated them, the numbers refused to work. He laughed bitterly, then recalculated again. Across the room, rain struck the window. The apartment felt smaller than ever. For the first time in years, genuine fear returned. Not fear of exile, not fear of loneliness, fear of failure. A week later, Rixa found him sitting outside a warehouse. You look terrible. I feel terrible. She sat beside him. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, she said, You know what I like about you? Cassian sighed. What? You actually tried. He looked at her. What does that mean? Most people quit the moment things get hard. She gestured toward the city. You spent years doing everything the right way. The statement lingered, because it was true. Years of work, years of sacrifice, years of effort. Yet somehow he remained one bad month away from disaster. Rixa stood. If you change your mind, let me know. Then she walked away, leaving Cassian alone with his thoughts. The next morning, he accepted. The transaction took less than 30 seconds. A customer approached. Credits changed hands. A cartridge changed hands. Then the customer disappeared into the crowd. That was all. No dramatic moment, no thunder, no immediate consequences. Just silence. Cassian stood there for several seconds, waiting to feel something. Guilt, relief, shame, excitement. Instead, he felt something unexpected. Nothing. The market continued operating around him. Workers moved cargo. Vendors sold food. Rain fell from gray skies. Life continued, as though nothing important had happened. Yet deep down, Cassian understood the truth. A line had been crossed, not because he sold a cartridge, because for the first time since arriving on Vesper's reach, he had stopped asking what was right, and started asking what worked. The answer would change the course of his life.